This week, the Springboks have a unique opportunity to answer some questions about the team when they face Portugal. Now, Rassie would have loved to beat Ireland 2-0, but that's in the past, and I want you to look forward to this Portugal fixture where the Springboks aim to dominate. There are 14 changes from the 15 players that started against Ireland, but within those changes, there are plenty of World Cup winners who are looking to prove themselves to get back into the starting 23 for that Rugby Championship. With an aging side and some serious injuries within the Springbok side, this game is going to allow the Springboks to build some depth and answer 7 serious concerns about the Springbok team at the moment. As always, let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comments. If you haven't, please leave this video a like, and if you haven't, please absolutely mur that subscribe button. Still about 85% of you that watch this channel on a regular basis are not subscribed, so please just make sure that you are subscribed to this channel. It helps the channel out way more than you know, and it allows us to reach more rugby lovers. So let's get in to these 7 major concerns. So the first concern is who is next in line for hooker. Now, since 2018, Bonga Manambe and Malcolm Marx have been the primary hookers for the Springboks. In the 2019 World Cup, we saw Schalk Brits kind of fill in as that third hooker as well as a loose forward. In the 2023 Rugby World Cup, we saw Deon Fourie fill in that position as the third hooker as well as the loose forwards. Now, after the 2019 World Cup, Joseph Dwebe was sort of the third hooker or the third hooker in line for the Springboks, but since then he's sort of gone out of favor. And now, as we post 2023 Rugby World Cup, we do have a couple more selections for that next hooker in line. We've got Johan Grobler, we've got Jan-Hendrik Wessels, and we've got Andrew Hugo Venter, who plays for the Stormers. Now, interestingly, Venter actually is the substitute for Joseph Dwebe in the Stormers outfit. So obviously Rassie sees a little bit something in him as we build to the 2027 World Cup. Johan Grobler has been given the start against Portugal this week. He's had a very, very good season for the Bulls, and I'm sure Rassie Erasmus just kind of wants to test him out and see if he is going to be able to sort of be in the team for that 2027 World Cup. And then Jan-Hendrik Wessels, who's only 23 years old, Rassie has come out and said that they've put a lot of energy and time into Jan-Hendrik Wessels, who can play prop, he can also play hooker, and they've sort of coached him through the systems from sort of under 16 level till now that he's 23. So that is the reason that Jan-Hendrik Wessels is in the team. He's also very, very young. I mean, Bonga Manambe is now 33, and it's doubtful that he'll be sort of in the fray in the 2027 Rugby World Cup. Obviously, he wants to be in the fray, but with Malcolm Marx, who's a little bit younger, and then Johan Grobler, Jan-Hendrik Wessels, and Andrew Hugo Venter coming through, we could see a little bit of a shift in that hooker position. With Malcolm Marx's injury as well, it's of vital importance that Rassie Erasmus does have that depth in the hooker position. I do think for the Rugby Championship, Bonga Manambe will be the go-to hooker. Unsure of whether Malcolm Marx will be back for the sort of the first 2 tests against Australia. So Johan Grobler could be thrust into the Springbok side at a Rugby Championship level and pick up some nice caps along the way. But I do think this Portugal test will go a long way in sort of answering that question around the hooker position. The next question that needs to be answered on Saturday is the new Pieter-Steph du Toit and the new Siya Kolisi. Now, Pieter-Steph du Toit has picked up a niggle. He'll be out for 4 to 6 weeks. Siya Kolisi hasn't been picked for the side to face Portugal. But interestingly, Rassie Erasmus has selected Pepsi Buthelezi in that number 6 jersey and Ben Jason Dixon in that number 7 jersey. Now let's start with Ben Jason Dixon, who had a very good season for the Stormers, but he is sort of a carbon copy of Pieter-Steph du Toit. Pieter-Steph can play lock as well as that number 7 position, and Ben Jason Dixon also provides that utility to play 7 as well as lock. Now, Pepsi Buthelezi is somewhat of a Siya Kolisi mold as well. He's very agile, he's fast, he's quick to the rucks, he's very Siya Kolisi-esque. So I do think Rassie Erasmus is sort of trying those two out in those specific positions to mimic a Siya Kolisi and a Pieter-Steph du Toit. Rassie Erasmus doesn't want to change the system around the players, but rather find players that fit into the system. And Pepsi Buthelezi plays very similarly to Siya Kolisi. Ben Jason Dixon will fulfill a very similar role to that of Pieter-Steph du Toit. Now, the loose forward debate in the Springbok camp is obviously vast and wide. We have so many guys that can play those loose positions. Evan Roos, Ulrich Loh, Cameron Hanekom. There's just so many guys. So Rassie sort of selecting these two to play against Portugal does tell me that maybe he does see Pepsi Buthelezi as a future replacement or substitute for Siya Kolisi, and Ben Jason Dixon in the light of Pieter-Steph du Toit. We saw Ben Jason Dixon get his first cap against Wales. This will be Pepsi Buthelezzi's debut for the Springboks. So it's going to answer some questions around those loose forward positions. You've also got Ulrich Loh and Ruan Venter on the bench, who I'm sure will come on and play a role. So those two might also have something to say about who's going to be in that loose forward trio moving into the 2027 Rugby World Cup. The next question we need answered is, where does Aphelele Fassi sit in the pecking order? Now, obviously, Damian Willemse has been injured for a couple of months, and we saw Willie le Roux play against Ireland. Unfortunately, he did get injured in the second or third minute in that second test. But Willie le Roux's career is sort of coming to an end, although he said he wants to play in the 2027 Rugby World Cup. How likely that's going to be, I'm not too sure. I do still think our first choice fullback is Damian Willemse when he's fit, and I think Willie le Roux even plays second fiddle to Damian Willemse when Damian Willemse is fit, playing good rugby for the Springboks. But we're going to find out exactly where Aphelele Fassi fits in, because he started against Wales, had an unbelievable game against Wales. He's now going to start this game against Portugal, but we also have Kewan Horn on the bench, who's going to win his first cap for the Springboks, coming off of the bench in that number 15 position. And we also have Sasha Fynbog Mgumazulu, who has been very, very impressive in sort of these 3 or 4 tests that he's played. He can play 10, 12, and 15. So I do think he is going to be one for the future. He's definitely going to be one of those guys like a Damian Willemse that Rassie Erasmus builds the back line around. I prefer Sasha at 10. I prefer Willemse at 15. But Aphelele Fassi also provides that utility. And we know how much Rassie Erasmus loves utility in the back line. We know he likes to play a 6-2, even sometimes a 7-1 split. And having that utility in the back line is a massive, massive advantage. So Fassi, who had a great season for the Sharks, played very well for Wales, does have that number 15 jersey this week, but he can also slot into wing. So he does sort of tick the box of that utility type of player. He's going to have a very good game against Portugal, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see Rassie Erasmus test him a little bit in the Rugby Championship. But that fight for the number 15 jersey in the Springboks is at an all-time high. Damian Willemse needs the competition. That's how we improve players. And if you think, if everyone's fit, we have Damian Willemse, Willie le Roux, Aphelele Fassi, Kewan Horn, and Sasha Fynbog Mgumazulu, who can all play in that number 15 jersey. So that's massive, massive depth. But I do think this weekend we're going to figure out exactly where Aphelele Fassi fits into that pecking order. The next question that this Portugal test is going to answer is the Springboks utility front rowers. Now, for this test, Rassie Erasmus has looked to Trevor Nyakane and Thomas du Toit. Now, both vastly experienced Springbok players. They've both won World Cups, but Trevor is getting a little bit on the older side. He's now 35, and I think Rassie is going to put him in here to see if he can still play at the highest level. Yes, it's only against Portugal, but to give Trevor some time and potentially play in the Rugby Championship, maybe even into the Rugby World Cup, we're going to have to see. Thomas du Toit is sort of the natural successor to that of Trevor Nyakane, just because they can both play on either side of the scrums. And then you throw in Jan-Hendrik Wessels, who can play prop and hooker. At 23 years of age, could be one for the future. Obviously, we still have Ox, we still have Vincent Koch, we still have Frans Malherbe. We still have a very, very healthy front row at the moment. But this is Rassie Erasmus testing who are those guys that are sitting just under the Ox and Churs, the Vincent Kochs, the Frans Malherbes, for the depth to ball towards the next 2027 Rugby World Cup. And as we know, we keep saying it, Rassie Erasmus loves that utility within a player. Jan-Hendrik Wessels provides a hooker and prop utility. Trevor Nyakane and Thomas du Toit offer utility because they can scrum on both sides of the scrum. So it's going to be very, very interesting this week to see who performs, see who doesn't. Thomas du Toit has had a great season for Bath. Can he replicate that form for the Springboks? Trevor has had a bit of an up and down season for Racing 92, but he's now back at the Sharks. He's on home ground, and I'm sure he's going to relish this opportunity to play for the Springboks and really answer some of Rassie Erasmus' questions around that front row, and more importantly, the front row that comes off the bench in the big tests. The next question that needs to be answered this week, and we've seen it a lot in the comments on social media, is Salman Murat's leadership quality as well as the lock issues that the Springboks are having. Now, there is a bit of a lock crisis in the South African team at the moment. Before the July internationals, Loet de Jager and Jean Klein picked up injuries. Now Franco Mostert had just broken his leg. So we are down 3 high quality locks. And our answer could be in Salman Murat. He's obviously starting alongside Archie Snyman, but more importantly, can Salman Murat lead this team on Saturday and be a future leader that the Springboks look to towards the 2027 World Cup, maybe even lead a couple of tests in the Rugby Championship? Now, Salman Murat has always been looked as a leader. He captained his high school team, he captained the junior Springboks, he captains Western Province and the Stormers. The questions, though, are around his overall performance. Is he good enough to play lock alongside Eben Etzebeth, alongside Archie Snyman? Does he provide that impact that we look for in that lock position? The lock department in the Springbok side is very, very important because the set piece is so important. The lineouts need to be operating, the scrums need to be operating, and you can kind of see where Rassie Erasmus is going with this. He values Salman Murat's leadership capabilities, which he's going to test on Saturday. But he has snubbed the likes of Ruan Nokia, who had a great season for the Bulls, as well as someone like Ruben van Heerden has been overlooked. And he's rather gone for the Lions' blindside flanker, Ruan Venter and Ulrich Loh, who can sort of play that second row as well as the back row. And again, Rassie Erasmus loves that utility. So he is trying to make up for a lock position using loose forwards. There aren't any quote-unquote locks on the bench. So if Salman Murat or Archie Snyman comes off, then Ulrich Loh might have to slot into lock, or Ruan Venter might have to slot into lock for this game against Portugal. It is a little bit of an unusual selection, but we know Rassie Erasmus loves his unusual selections. And when Pieter-Steph du Toit is back, Pieter-Steph might also have to slot into that lock position because we've got Eben, we've got Archie Snyman, and we've got Salman Murat at the moment. Those are out-and-out locks, and then obviously when Lut de Jager, Jean Klein, and Franco Moser are back, then we will have a little bit more depth. But Rassie Erasmus is going to have to test out that lock position this week. I wouldn't be surprised if Ulrich Loh slots into one of those lock positions for Salman Murat or Archie Snyman, just trying to build that lock depth. And then Salman Murat is going to have to answer for that captain's armband, because there's been a lot of comments, a lot of criticism towards that selection, and Salman Murat needs to step up and show his leadership capabilities, because if Rassie likes him, he could be leading us in to the 2027 Rugby World Cup. The sixth concern that is going to be answered this week is this a second coming for Lukhanyo Am? Now, Lukhanyo Am was our go-to player in the 2019 Rugby World Cup and was arguably one of the best players in that Rugby World Cup. But since his injury in 2022, he hasn't sort of regained his confidence and that former glory that he had. We obviously saw Jesse Creel slot in for him in the 2023 Rugby World Cup, and Jesse has made that position his own. We've also got Kane and Moody, who can play in that number 13 position. So there's a lot of competition. I like that Am's getting a start in this test against Portugal too. Let's see him back in a Springbok jersey. Let's see what he's about. Can he regain the form? And I mean, when Lukhanyo Am's at his best, he is one of the best 13s in the world. His defensive capabilities in that number 13 channel is out of this world. He can tear any defense open on attack. So if Lukhanyo Am is fit, if he can play the rugby that he was playing in the 2019 World Cup, then that competition again all of a sudden steps up in that number 13 role. And then we sort of lead into our last concern and question that needs to be answered, and that is, can Kobus Reinach and Manie Lebok bounce back? Now, Manie has been a massive talking point over the sort of the last 8 to 10 months. From the Rugby World Cup, we saw Kobus Reinach and Manie Lebok play a heavy role within that World Cup, and then sort of in the final they got snubbed, and Faf de Klerk and Andre Pollard ended up starting at 9 and 10. Manie has obviously gone under a little bit of scrutiny over his kicking, but he is a very good attacking fly-off. Some have also said that maybe his defense isn't up to scratch, but I think Manie Lebok on his day is one of the best fly-offs in the world, and I really hope this Saturday that he does answer the critics, that he does come and play 110%, that he creates opportunities, that his kicking is good. I also hope that Kobus Reinach has a good game, because we have Faf de Klerk. We obviously saw he didn't have a great series against Ireland, and then I think our next best scrum-off is probably Grant Williams, but Kobus Reinach is around there. I mean, we've seen him do it in the 2023 Rugby World Cup for the Springboks, and I just want to see him get some game time, get some confidence back, because if we can sort of play a Grant Williams or Kobus Reinach as well as a Manie Lebok or Sasha Fynbo Ngumazulu in that number 10 position leading to the 2027 Rugby World Cup, then the South African rugby is in a very good spot. As always, let me know what you guys think down in the comments about all of these concerns. Who's going to answer the call? Who isn't going to answer the call? Make sure you leave this video a like, and if you haven't, please absolutely mur that subscribe button. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy. Peace.